It's always good to keep someone humble, right? Invite them up and then invite them back down right away. Let's see, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, it's good to see you one more time, one final time. Thank you for being out here. I want to thank the Warner Robins Church family. It's a very special family. I really appreciate everyone I've gotten a chance to meet here. The hospitality that's been shown to me, the kindness, the love. It's a really, really special place. And so those of you who are visiting, I hope you get a chance to visit here again because there's just so much love in this place. And that's what we're really looking for, right? We're all looking for love. We're looking for people who care and for kindness and affection and all of that. Tonight's a little bit different in that I don't have slides. I decided not to make any tonight. And we are going to have a microphone roving again. I want to ensure that since it's the last night, we really do have some time for any of the final questions or thoughts you might have. And those online as well, I think they'll be monitoring the stream. So if anybody has questions, you can type those and put them in. And I want to give you a warning as well, maybe not a warning, but a forewarning that like each night, we're going to be talking about challenging topics. Tonight in particular, we're talking about a heavy topic. We've already started to address it. That's the idea of suicide, that when we get to a place of depression that's so deep and so overwhelming, sometimes people have a hard time thinking straight. And it can impact them to the point that I found in my experience, very few people actually want to die. What they want is this suffering and this pain to stop. And so what some people are tempted to do is make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And I want to help prepare you in some ways. If you have a friend or a family member or someone else who's really struggling, really going through a lot of stuff, maybe to help you feel slightly more prepared. And I appreciate this gentleman that came up before me. I'd like to meet you afterward and shake your hand. It sounds like you're doing some really incredible work. And I'm sure you have even more insight that you could share on this topic as well. As we get started tonight, I wanted to introduce a study that I heard about a while ago. And this study had to do with monkeys. This was when they were testing on monkeys in a little less humane way than they do now. And they wanted to understand the impact of trauma on the brain. And so they decided to traumatize a monkey. And so they took a monkey, they put the monkey in the cage, they banged the cage, they made loud noises, they flashed the lights all over the place and did everything they could to scare this poor little monkey. And then they took the monkey out and they tested the levels of the stress hormone that we've been talking about, cortisol, in the brain. And of course it was skyrocketed, right? It's a poor, terrified little monkey. And they decided they were going to redo this experiment, and they only made one change. And I think I've shared this before. Some of you might have heard this before. But they did the exact same experiment. They put the monkey in the cage, and they did all the rattling, all the noise, all the music, all the lights, everything. But they placed one more monkey in the cage. That's all they changed. Then they took those monkeys out, and they studied their levels of cortisol. And they found that just by having one more monkey in the cage, it cut their stress hormone in half. Just by 50%. Just by having another monkey in the cage. And this speaks to a truth that is biblically based, that we know is absolutely just a reality of life, that we need people. We need fellowship. We need loving people in our corner. Every person does. And I want to give you an encouragement. If you don't know what to do, right, and you're saying someone comes and talks to me about something really heavy, I have no idea what to do. I'm telling you right now, as long as you are present with them, just by being there, you are cutting their stress hormones in half. Isn't that powerful? That's powerful. In fact, sometimes the best thing we can do is be there and not say anything. If you don't know what to say, maybe don't say anything at all. You know, we look at the story of Job. Many of us know that story quite well, right? Job went through all kinds of trauma, all kinds of challenges, and he's sitting there in the worst moment of his existence, and his friends come, and they sat with him. And that was a beautiful thing. And then they opened their mouths. And that was not so beautiful, right? That caused all kinds of issues because they thought they knew the answers, right? They thought they knew what to do, and the reality was they didn't. So if you don't know what to do, sometimes the best thing is to be silent, to listen, to ask questions. That's a lot of what I'm going to talk about right there. But I wanted to bring out just a few key things. One that's really important to remember simply is that we cannot assume we know what people are going through. Many of us, we have in our minds an idea of what a person with depression looks like. We have an idea in our mind of what a person who is considering ending their life, what they might act like, right? So these might be real sad people sitting in the corner, not talking to anybody. But we know the reality is that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the popular people. Sometimes it's the people with the biggest smile on their face. Sometimes it's the helpers, the ones who are helping everyone else through their problems. And so you don't think that they would be possibly going through stuff themselves. So I want to remind you, first of all, do not assume that you know what people are dealing with. Don't assume. Now, sometimes you're going to see signs. I think there's a paper out there that's going to talk about the warning signs. When you see those signs, again, don't overlook those signs. Don't assume, oh, that's fine. You know, I know there's a couple things on here, but they'll be all right. One of the next things that's really important, one of the biggest myths we have when we talk about suicidal behavior and ideation is the idea that if I ask somebody if they're suicidal, that's going to implant the idea in their mind. It's going to make them think about it and consider it where they weren't before. Study after study has shown that is not the case. Asking someone openly, honestly, are you considering taking your own life? Are you thinking about suicide? I've noticed you've been real sad lately. You know, I heard you say this. I heard you say this. Are you thinking about this? That does not implant the idea. It does not make someone suicidal, but it can relieve the pressure of someone who is considering it. Because like we talked about last night, what's shareable is bearable. Remember what I said that? What's shareable is bearable. If someone is opening up and actually talking to you and they say, yes, to be honest, I kind of am. I just don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. Just by them verbalizing that to you can sometimes relieve the internal pressure that's going on. But something else I also want to bring out and I think is really important to recognize, and our friend here brought this out as well in a really powerful way. Every person's actions are their own decisions. And this is hard for us to accept sometimes. But the reality is we cannot save somebody else. In other words, they have to make their own decisions. Are you with me? That's really important because sometimes we see people that are going down a self-destructive route. And we can do whatever we can to offer help, but they have to make the decision to accept that help. Just like the gentleman talked about last night for the Narcotics Anonymous group, and he was saying that when someone is ready, they're ready. But until they're ready, you can't take them and put them in recovery if they're not ready to be in recovery. People who are dealing with deep depression, people who are going through these really terrible struggles, they're not in a place where their mind is thinking clearly. We've talked a lot about the stress hormone. We've talked a lot about what it can do when it pulls on our brain, how it impacts our brain structure. So when someone is in that place, they're in a place of sickness. Just like if somebody has cancer, their body's in a place of sickness. They're in a place of sickness, and sometimes it's hard for them to see the realities of the situations. And so when they make a decision that they decide they want to go forward with a plan like this, they're making an impulsive decision, but it's oftentimes because they've been dealing with something for a very, very long time. And they're having a hard time knowing exactly what to do about it. So what should we do if we're suspecting this, or if we start this conversation like we just talked about, we decide that we're going to just openly, seriously ask a person, how are you doing? What's going on? I'm a little concerned, you know, those sorts of questions. And someone opens up to you. Or maybe you don't even ask, but they seem like they trust you, and so they just start talking to you, and they share some heavy things with you. Hey, this has been going on, this is going on, and I really don't know. Like, I can't see past today right now. Now, what should we do? What shouldn't we do? I wanted to tell you a couple things. First of all, as you study the warning signs, that'll give you an idea of what to be looking for. And I'm not going to go over those. You can look at them there. But one thing that's really important is anytime someone shares something really heavy with you, that's a powerful thing. That's a place of trust, right? That means that they see you as somebody that they can talk to about real stuff. And we all know you can't talk to everybody, right? So just the very fact that they're opening up to you is a really positive thing. And so one of the first things I tell people to do is to thank people for trusting them with that kind of information. Wow, I really appreciate that you would trust me, that you would come to me with something like this. Thank you so much. You know, this is a really vulnerable place. Sounds like that's a really heavy thing that you're going through. And that's another thing that I always suggest that you do is you validate how they are feeling. Okay? That doesn't mean that we agree necessarily with their perspective, but it doesn't matter if we agree with their perspective or not. What we're doing is we're saying, it sounds like you are going through a really heavy place right now. Sounds like you are feeling incredibly overwhelmed. That must be a really lonely thing that a really lonely place to be. That makes a person feel heard, right? It makes a person feel seen. What we don't want to do in those moments is we do not want to bring, and sometimes we accidentally do this, we don't want to guilt trip people. People who are already dealing with these issues, they're often carrying such a heavy weight of guilt and shame of themselves. That's part of what they're trying to escape. So sometimes we might tell them all the reasons why they should want to be alive. And we're doing it for the right reasons. We want to give them that sort of that hope and that optimism. But in that moment, oftentimes it's just putting on another weight that they're already carrying so many heavy things. So that doesn't mean that we don't want to point them to the positive things in their life, but I always want them to identify those things, right? So I might ask them, like, what gives you hope in this moment? What are some things that are keeping you going in these heavy times? What's something that you're looking forward to? But what I don't want to do is I don't want to tell them, well, you don't want to do that, right? You know, life is too precious, or think of the people that you might hurt. Because what that does, again, is it puts more guilt on people who are already typically feeling so heavy and so overwhelmed. When people get to this point, again, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg when they come to us. We may not realize how long they've been wrestling with stuff. Some people are carrying things for decades, and they haven't found that place of hope that this is going to get better. Now, the good news is, as we've been talking about all throughout this time, it can get better. It does get better. Many people get past this and move forward. You demonstrated this. You shared that you were suicidal at one point in your life, as was I, very seriously. I haven't really shared my story, but there was a time where I had made a plan, and I was getting ready to say goodbye when God got a hold of my life. It totally transformed my existence, and I'm grateful for that. But I also lost friends about the same time. And so it's a difficult thing, it's a hard thing, but many times we don't realize how long people have been carrying the things that they're carrying. Another thing I would suggest that you don't do is you don't overreact, okay? You don't freak out when somebody tells you something like this. Sometimes we're so scared of what they're saying, we're so overwhelmed by the idea of what they're saying that it puts us, remember if you've been here, you remember this, right? It puts us in that place where we get into survival mode and we start reacting in a very emotional way. And what that does for the other person is says, oh my goodness, I don't want to burden you with my stuff because that's freaking you out. So then I'm going to shut down to protect you. I don't want to tell you anymore because I'm scared of how it might impact you. And if people do that 2 or 3 times, they talk to different people and people keep sort of overreacting, that person says, I'd better not tell anybody at all. And that's one of the worst things that can happen, right? Is when people stop talking about this. The very worst thing you can do if you are going through this is not tell people that you're struggling. Because then you're keeping it all inside and that pressure builds up and builds up and builds up. And it starts making the problems feel much larger than they really are. So even if it is overwhelming to you, do your best to breathe, to relax, to be grateful that someone is sharing with you, and to remember your role, okay? I've talked about this a few times. Your role is not the therapist. Your role is not the psychiatrist. Your role in that moment is a friend, and that's an extremely sacred role. It's a very important role. But unless you've had advanced training in some way, it's going to go beyond what you are able and capable of handling. And that's okay. So what we're trying to do in these moments when people do come and talk to us and we maybe not know what to do, we're going to be grateful for what they're saying. And then our role as a friend is to do whatever it takes to help them, which means we are going to ensure that they bring someone else into the conversation who maybe has more training than we do. So we don't want to offer like nice, platitudes and little answers. We also don't want to not respond at all, right? I've heard some people talk about how they opened up about really heavy stuff to somebody, and then that person that they opened up to said, oh, okay, and then sort of changed the subject, just kept going. And what that does is it makes it feel like, okay, this is not important to you, right? Like what I'm sharing is heavy to me, but it's not important to you. And again, it shuts people down. The goal that we want to have is be the type of people where people will not shut down around us, but they will keep the conversation open. Always wanting to point to the optimistic things, the reality that help is available, people can get through this, and that we are there with them through this whole thing. But one thing that's really important, and I think we might have talked about it a little bit, is that we don't want to swear secrecy when it comes to this issue. So I've dealt with unfortunately, a lot of suicidal young people. I worked at a runaway and homeless youth shelter, and so we had kids in crisis coming. Every week, we were dealing with some really heavy emotions and these kids who weren't sure if they wanted to continue their lives. And oftentimes, they want to share with someone they trust. So if I build a connection with them, they want to share with me. But they don't want me to tell anyone, right? Because they don't want mom to find out, or they don't want this or that to happen. And so they want me to not say anything. And the temptation is for me to promise that, right? Yeah, okay, I won't say anything, to get them to talk. But the problem with that is I cannot promise that in these points, because the number one thing more than anything else is a person's safety, right? Because we can work through any issue as long as a person is still with us. But if a person is no longer with us, we can't keep going. We can't keep working. So I've had to tell students many, many times as they share some things with me, I really appreciate what you're sharing. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you so much. I need to tell you, because I value you so much, your safety is number one. I want you to be in a safe place. That means I've got to talk to somebody. But what I do is I give them options. Can you identify, do you know somebody, do you have a counselor, do you have someone else that you really trust that you could talk to? I'll go with you. Or I can talk for you if that's what you want. But my point is, I'm not leaving this room, especially with a young person, I'm not leaving with this room until I've connected with them with somebody who is going to get them the help that they need or can evaluate exactly where they're at. Something else that I think is really important with all this, we have an assumption that if we tell somebody, like if you tell me as a counselor that you are suicidal, that I'm automatically going to send you to the hospital and lock you away, right, in a psych ward. And a lot of people assume that, and so they don't share these things because they're afraid of what might happen. The reality is, I was dealing with a crisis recently. I talked with 5 different counselors in a 24-hour period, and not one of us wanted to send this person to a hospital because we know that's not the ideal place for healing. It's just not. It's not the ideal place. The purpose of a person going to a hospital against their will, when it does happen, is because we are not convinced that they're going to be safe enough in the next 24 to 48 hours, right, that we can trust them by themselves, right? It's the absolute last resort. And even still, after 48 hours, we still need to have a plan. We need to have a better thing in place because people can't live their lives in hospitals, right? They live their lives in their community, with their families and with their friends. So what we need is we need healthy relationships. We need good supports. So even if you tell somebody that you are thinking these thoughts or you are considering these things, if you're talking to a counselor, they're not going to freak out. They're not going to be overwhelmed by anything you share with them because they've heard it all before, many, many times. And there's a big scale, okay? And so there's a severity scale. So what people are looking for a lot of times, what professionals are looking for, is how far, how advanced have you gotten in these thoughts? So what we're asking is, has a person attempted suicide before? If so, they're at extremely high risk for trying again. So that's something we pay very close attention to. Another thing that we're looking for is whether or not they just have a desire or if they have a plan. There's a very big difference between just this idea in our heads that we're not feeling very good about ourselves and an actual plan. No, I know how I want to accomplish this thing. That puts a person at a very high risk because they've taken some serious steps. The next thing we look for is intent. Okay, you tell me that you have this plan. Do you have the intent? Like, do you plan to go through with your plan? And again, what we're looking for is how close are they getting to that real crisis? And we're trying to get people to back away from that crisis, right? And so all of that is to say that even if that's something that is going on in your life and you are overwhelmed and you are, feeling this way, just because you tell somebody, especially if you're an adult, just because you tell somebody that you're going through some things and you're considering ending your life, that's not going to put you in a hospital 9 times out of 10. That's just not how it works. And hopefully that can give you a little bit of relief to be a little bit more open about the struggles you're dealing with. Counselors are going to help you to process the feelings, the reasons why you're getting to that point to begin with, so that you can take some of that pressure off, so we can build the supports around you, so that you can want to live, right? That's what we want. We want everyone to have a desire to live. Amen? That's what we're looking for. And in the meantime, your role as a friend is to get those people in the room who have the training and who can kind of assess for what's going on. It is not your job to figure out how serious this is. When people make these types of statements, your job is to take it seriously. Now, that's hard sometimes because we all know there are sometimes people who make these on a regular basis, right? They make these comments, and sometimes people seem to use it as a way to sort of manipulate people or to make people feel bad, or we might say to gain attention. And what we tempted to do is we tempted to get kind of burnt out or cynical on those people and not take it seriously. But that's not okay, right? At any time somebody makes comments like that, we take it seriously every single time. Every single time. Because especially those kids who are kind of using it maybe to manipulate a relationship, or not just kids, people. If they know we're going to take it seriously, I mean, I had some kids at the shelter sometimes who would make comments because they knew it would sort of get a rise. But we would take them to the hospital every single time they made that claim, because we're not the ones assessing. We're going to take them to the hospital to assess. They usually did not get admitted. But they would then know, okay, if I say these things and I'm just doing it to like get out of sweeping the floor, right, it's going to be taken seriously. And that shows that we deeply care about them. We deeply care about their safety, whether or not they're serious about it. So it's not your job to determine how serious someone is. It's your job to pay attention to what they're saying and to be very clear when someone says something that you might be concerned about. When you said, I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, I don't have any hope for the future after this week. Like, when you said that, what did you mean by that? Because it might be you're just misunderstanding the situation, right? It could be that you're just sort of reading into something and they were just saying, no, like, I'm just really tired, right? Like, I just need a break. I just need a vacation. But maybe they're talking in code about something that is much more serious. So for you, you're just going to clarify. What did you mean by that? And if they're saying, well, I don't know. I don't see any future after this week. Are you considering taking your life? Are you considering suicide? Right? Just say it. Just bring it right out in the open. What I've found with a lot of people is that we're the ones who are uncomfortable talking about it, right? And when we talk about it, when we put it out front and we just can deal with it right as it is, it relieves a lot of the pressure of the entire situation. Now we can get the people the help they need when they need it. And the other thing to remember is just because somebody's had a peak doesn't mean they're not going to hit another valley, right? So people are going to struggle sometimes, and then they're going to get help, and they're going to do well for a while. But then, just like any other time, stress happens, challenges hit, and then we can go through another valley. We can go through another challenging time. So we don't want to assume, again, people seem like they're doing better now. People seem like they're okay. It's still okay to check in on your friends, right? At all times. Even if they seem like they're having a great time, it's still okay to check in. Hey, you seem like you're doing really well. How are you doing internally? Where are you at? Right? And you might be surprised how honest people will be if you really want to know. Because all of us want to be heard. All of us want to be seen. The reality is most of the time, most people in our lives may not really want to know, right? Because that's when we get into other people's mess and we get overwhelmed. So if you want to be a friend that can be truly helpful, what you're going to do is you're going to actually not assume, you're going to ask people about these types of things. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to share here. Yeah, don't swear people to secrecy, because the reality is you're going to have to break that confidentiality if you're a good friend, right? So if you tell somebody, they're like, hey, please don't tell anybody, and then they tell you something about how they're thinking about ending their life, you don't want that on you, right? You do not want to hold that to yourself and be responsible for that information by yourself. You have to bring someone else into the room. So don't promise that you're not. Just tell them straight up, this is too big for me. Can we talk to somebody together? I'll do it, you do it, I don't care, but we need to talk to somebody. And even if they say, if you tell anybody, I'm never going to be your friend again. I'm going to hate you. You know, you're the worst person in the world if you tell, because I trusted you. You still have to be honest and say, I've got to tell somebody. I'm not going to tell everybody, right? But I've got to tell somebody. And so what I always tried to do was tell these people, you know, you can identify the person that you want to bring into the room with us. You can pick your trusted person, but we've got to bring a trusted person here, someone with some training. If you don't know anybody, then we'll find somebody and we can do it together. But I'm not going to leave you to this by yourself, and I'm not going to keep this to myself. And I've always said, I would rather have a person angry with me for the rest of their life, right, than someone who thought that I was their friend, but I kept that type of stuff to myself and something happened. So I'm always going to risk the relationship itself if it means that I might save a life. Always. And I hope that you will as well. Do not keep that type of thing to yourself. Don't keep that a secret. There's a lot more I could say, but I wanted to make sure that we had time for dialogue. I know that we're probably already running a little late on that. But yeah, are there things that you had questions about, or any other ideas, if you have some other things you wanted to share on this topic, or really on some of the other things that we've been talking about? I just wanted to be sure that we have a time to address them before I go. So does anybody have anything they wanted to ask? I see a hand.
Okay, so I have two questions. So let's say if you have a friend or somebody that is talking to you about like suicide, like you said, like you kind of touched on it, like don't say anything, but like sometimes like you might feel like you want to say something. So what are some good words to say, especially if you don't really, you never experienced that yourself,
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would ask more questions than give advice for the most part, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to hear. I'm trying to know. Hey, when you say this, like, what's going on? Why are you in this place? Maybe not why. Why is a tough question for people to answer a lot of times. But ask some follow-up questions to what they're saying. And then I often give them my love and remind them of how much I value them. Not because I'm trying to guilt trip them, but just say, I want you to know, I think you're a fantastic person. Right? Like, I think that I've really looked up to you. I mean, don't lie to them, right? If you don't look up to them, don't tell them you look up to them. But whatever it is that you can point to the positive in the person, really hold on to that. And then, like I said earlier, what are some things that are giving you hope right now? What are some things that are, allowing you to look forward in life? Because part of the challenge when we're in a place of suicidal thoughts is we're looking right in front of us and we're forgetting about the future. Or we have such a negative view of the future, we feel so trapped in our circumstances that it's hard to remember that our lives can and will change. That this is a season, it's a heavy season, but we can get through this season. The other thing that I would always ask is, I'm asking if they have a counselor, and if their counselor knows about what they're talking about, because that's one thing. If their counselor's aware, that's a really good thing. By the way, side note on this, counselors cannot even confirm that a person is a client, right? You guys probably know this. They can't even, so if you called and said, hey, can I talk to the counselor of so-and-so? They wouldn't even confirm that person existed. But the opposite is not true. You can always talk to a counselor. What that means is If you know this person and they say, hey, yeah, it's fine, you can leave a message for my counselor, right? Then you can call that counselor and leave a voicemail. Say, hey, I was talking to so-and-so. I just wanted you to be aware that this was a conversation they had. This is what they said. I'm a little bit worried about it. You know, they'll never call you back if you don't have a release of information. They're never going to confirm that they even got the message. But that information can help a person as they're having sessions moving forward. So just so you know, you can always give information to a counselor. They're just not going to give any information back to you. And that's appropriate. Does that answer your question at all? I know there's...
Yeah, and then the other one was like, how... Okay, I think the way I say it. So how do you know that it's bad enough to where you need to contact another person in that moment? Like, you know, some people say things just because they're emotional.
Right.
But like, once they get some sleep and they wake up next morning, they're like, oh no, I was on some foolish stuff last night.
Yeah.
But then like, some people are actually thinking about doing it 2 hours from now. So how do you know how serious it is?
Yeah. So first of all, even with the training that I have and the background that I have, I always pray when conversations get deep. The first thing I'm doing is I'm praying internally, right? Like I'm not going to just pray out loud. Sometimes it's not the time or place for that. Sometimes people aren't ready to hear all that. I'll ask people. Now I'm asking people like later if they want, if they're okay with me praying with them. If they are, I'm definitely going to pray. But in that moment, I'm praying for wisdom because I don't even always know, right? I just don't always know. But if you have a doubt, it is better to overreact than to underreact when it comes to this situation, right? So if you don't know what to do, it is better to talk to somebody than to not talk to somebody, because that person can give some perspective and some other things. So I would say if you really don't know and if you're not sure if it's serious or not, then treat it as if it's serious. It's just better to treat it as if it's serious. Because part of the thing is, especially with young people, people joke about suicide a lot right now, right? It's become part of just like the conversation a lot of times in our culture. And so we have to sort of combat that by taking it seriously anytime people say it. Not by freaking out and getting overwhelmed, but calling people out when they say stuff like this. You know, like, oh, kill me now because of my homework, right? What do you mean by that, right? Like we have to kind of consider the language we're using because words have power and words have meaning. So I think it's really important to take words and language seriously. If you don't know, sometimes what I will do is I'll call somebody who has some experience and I'll use hypotheticals. Hey, what if a person was talking to you and they said these things? What would you do, right? And then those people might talk me through a little bit about hypothetically what they would do in that situation. That can give me a lot of help. And this is why I keep telling you to bring other people in the room, because again, even though I have training, I have a degree, I have licensure, whatever, anytime we have real serious situations, I'm calling 2 or 3 other people with more experience than me. I'm not going to make decisions by myself. And I would counsel you to do the same, right? In the multitude of what is it? In the multitude of counselors, there's great wisdom. What's that? Yes, Proverbs. And so it is important. If you don't know what to do, that's great. Admit that you don't know what to do. Just talk to some other people and just keep the conversation going. My one thing is, you know, just because they say it doesn't mean that they're in immediate danger. But if they are in immediate danger, meaning that you're worried about tonight, right? You're worried about tonight, then you don't leave that person. You don't leave that person. You stay with that person. You're gonna call somebody if they're willing to call. If they won't let you call anybody, you're still sticking around that person. You call 911 if you have to, right? We don't want to have to, but sometimes we have to, because again, safety is paramount. Now, 2 resources that are just important in general. Number 1, I think most of you probably are aware of it by now, but if you don't, 988 is the 911 for crisis calls. So if someone is suicidal, you can call or text 988 any time of day, and it will connect you to a local resource and a local crisis response team. And I've heard there's been some positive feedback about the one in this area, so that's good to know. So keep 988 there. Like I said, if you are in the midst of a friend, sometimes I've had that happen where I was with a young person where I'm like, I'm really concerned, but I can't just call because then it might escalate the situation. So I'm going to text, right? So 988, you can text them, you can talk to them about the situation, they can tell you, and sometimes they'll tell you, you need to contact authorities, and other times they'll be like, hey, here's what to do, or we're on our way, or whatever. So 988 is really good. The other training, I think it's a $30 online training. If you just want some understanding of this, you feel like this would benefit you, QPR is a good training. QPR, it's question, persuade, refer. And so like I said, it's a $30 training. It can be really, really helpful in understanding these do's and don'ts. I dealt with this on a very basic level, right, because we don't have that much time. But this is, I can't remember how many hours, 10, 15-hour training that can hopefully help you to feel a little bit more confident in dealing with people who are in crisis in your life without having to have like advanced training. So QPR is a great one. Yes?
Yeah, we just want to acknowledge the question that was online, which I believe you just answered in answering the other young man's question. It said, how do you respond to someone who is saying they will commit suicide, but it's very obviously a joke?
Yep. I would ask them very seriously. Like if someone says that around me, I'd be like, what did you mean by that? Oh, I was joking. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. Please don't joke about that around me. That's what I'm going to say. I love joking around. I love humor. I use humor all the time. But there are certain subjects that I think we need to take seriously enough that we don't joke about them. And one of them is suicide. So if someone's joking and it's clear that they're joking, I'm still going to ask them, what did you mean by that? Because sometimes people tell the truth when they're joking, right? A lot of truth is said in jest. You might have heard that before. So just because somebody jokes about it does not mean they're also serious about it. They might be. So I'm going to ask, and that might lead to a deeper conversation, or it might just be somebody who, it wasn't that deep. Why do you care so much? Well, I care so much because this is real life. Like, it actually matters. Anybody else?
Just to piggyback on the resources you said, I worked before I moved back as a school social worker, so I dealt with a lot of elementary and high school students who had mental health crises. So for parents, if your child comes up to you and tells you specifically that they are thinking of ending their life, another resource is the Georgia Crisis Number, and they're professionals that will go to wherever you are and assess the situation, and they will let you know the next steps. That might be going to the hospital, or it might just be them telling you you need to get them into therapy immediately. So it all depends on the severity, but if you don't know what to do, that's another resource, and it's just 1-800 mobile crisis, and it's across all of Georgia. So wherever you are in Georgia, they'll come to your home, they come to the school when I needed to, or even, they'll just ask you, where are you? The only downfall with that is they may take 2 hours, 3 hours, but that's where I'll say what Pastor Mello has said, don't leave them alone. Not even to go to the bathroom. If they say I need to go to the bathroom, go with them, follow them, because most likely they're trying to run away at that moment. But,
be annoying. Thank you so much for that. It's okay to be annoying in situations like this, right? And people will be like, oh, you're overreacting, it's not that deep. But they'll say that whether or not they mean it, right? They could just be saying that because they want you to leave them alone, and they just want some time. So absolutely do not leave them alone. That's a great resource. The Georgia Crisis Hotline, okay? And so you can Google that, and that can be a really good one if you have somebody in your life who's really going through some stuff. I see. We'll go with you, and then we'll go over here. Did you have something, or you were pointing over here? Go ahead.
I have the mic, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, are there certain self-soothing techniques that can help, not just with anxiety, but for when you are overwhelmed? And how beneficial are emotional support animals?
That's really good. So yes, there are self-soothing, plenty of self-soothing techniques. We talked about some of them last night. I'm not sure if you were able to be here last night. We talked about some of those. There's other ones, lots of great resources online. And so even if you just sort of do some research on that, but yes, absolutely. When we're overwhelmed, we have to find ways to bring ourselves back down. That emotional regulation is what we're looking for. That was interesting. All right. I guess the price is right. Does that mean my time's up? Sure.
All right.
So I'm going to invite Chaplain Seymour and Willis Range up as well. And we're going to kind of just put the seats here. We'll let some questions go. If you ask a general question, we'll let them just chime in. And if you have a question for one of them specifically, we'll do that just because we kind of wanted to do a panel thing before we ended
Yeah, we
anyways.
did.
So, so if you have a question, go ahead and put your hands up, but I'm going to ask if we can cut a couple mics on.
And let me address this one, the emotional support animal. There's a lot of studies that are showing that working with animals, having especially well-trained animals, relieves stress, brings that cortisol level down. It also can build a sense of mastery, like we've talked about when we're talking about resilience. There's a lot of really positive things to emotional support animals that are actual trained emotional support animals, not just like any animal. Sometimes people have taken advantage of that a little bit, but true trained animals, absolutely.
I have a question.
Can I chime in on that about the support?
Yeah, of course.
When I was going through my depression and after I was sexually molested, 19 years old, and my dog became my support. He wasn't a trained dog. He was just my support. And I found out that I can talk to my dog, and he do like this. He seemed like he listening. He seemed like he cared. And since then, I always had a dog. Even now, my wife even tells me, she said, I think you like that dog more than you love me. But it has been a comfort for me because sometimes with animals, it has been proven too that when older people, when they get older and they might have lost their spouse, you get them a animal, a dog, and they help them to live longer because they get to care for something. And a dog is about the closest thing that you're gonna get to where you find out what agape love is. Because you can be mad at that dog, but he's gonna be there to greet you when you come home and stuff. So my dog never been trained to help me, but they always been there to help me.
I have a question. As a parent, and you say you're dealing with, I guess, underage, under 18, you're dealing with kids who have issues, and you ask them, who do you trust? Who do you want to trust? What is your protocol letting the parents know what that child or underage is going through?
You're talking about if a child comes to me
Yes.
and they're suicidal. Yeah, well, anybody who's under 18, we need to discuss that with their parent because the parent is, or whoever is their legal guardian, has to know about the crisis that they're going through. We cannot keep that from them. When
Can a parent call and ask what is their status? Can you provide that information?
The legal guardian, yes, you can have access to the information as the legal guardian, whoever the legal guardian is. Anybody else, that's not the case. But yeah, confidentiality rules for somebody under 18, especially when we're talking about crisis work, you have to have the legal guardian involved in whatever the decision-making process is for their treatment, for their care.
Thank you.
And perhaps you have more to add there, either of you.
Totally agree. My wife is a counselor at a school. She's been a counselor for 20-some years, and she deals with this. And I'm sorry. So let's just say that kid who you're talking about has some issues. You can always call that counselor at that school and say, hey, they told me this and that. You can kind of like, can you check into this? Just like he said, you can always give them the information, but they're not going to give you back the information because you're not the parent. But also just being concerned. You see things, see something, say something. I'd rather be misunderstood than a child take their life.
That's right.
And You say you had that gut feeling. How many times after something have you like, man, something told me? But what that something is, that's the Holy Spirit letting you know what I mean? Hey, just listen to that. You know what I mean? Listen to that. And women, y'all are great with it. The spirit of nosiness is on y'all. You know what I mean? I'm just telling you, women, that's natural. That's really natural. You can really tell if something wrong. It's nothing more than a mother. A mother knows the cry of their child. You can have 100 kids back in the nursery, and your child cry, you can tell him, now, Daddy, he pretty much don't know. I don't be knowing nothing. But my wife knows, and so use that. A lot of times, use your intuition. If you feel something, I'd rather for you to call and just, like he's saying, just letting somebody know than not to say anything at all.
The other thing I would add to that, just in general, is anytime that I'm dealing with a young person in crisis, there's always some family dynamics that are going on in some way. And so part of helping anybody is going to be helping the family as well. So there's going to be bringing in the parent or whoever else is part of their family, because children need support, right? So the desire is not to cut the parents out or the family out from what's going on. The desire is always to help the whole family heal, because everyone is impacted when someone's going through a crisis like that.
And just to add to what Pastor Mello would have said is, in dealing with that minor, you also want to, once a bond has been created and a trust has been established, then you have to, it's advisable that you indicate to the minor, if there's a certain thing that comes up, I'll have to share it with your parents. What that does, it maintains the trust between the counselor and the person being the patient in this sense. And that individual will remember, even if I have something that I do not want to share it with anyone else, I can always share it with this person, because they would have asked me permission to share things with my parents, and so that trust is maintained.
Yeah, so when you got somebody that's dealing with real anger problems, what's the best way to go about helping them, whether it's yourself or a loved one, before it turns into depression and the suicidal thoughts?
Go ahead. Okay. All right. One thing that I have learned is that anger is usually a secondary emotion. I think I might have mentioned this once before in a different night too, meaning that whenever we have anger, there's almost always another emotion underneath that anger, and we're using the anger as a protective shield so that we don't maybe have to be so vulnerable about what's going on underneath. So when someone is having a lot of anger issues, they probably already have maybe either depression or anxiety or some other thing that they haven't quite dealt with. It's just coming out as anger. How you're asking what's the best way to help somebody. Ultimately, I would be curious as to what is the source of the anger. Like, where's it really coming from? What are we truly upset about or angry about or sad about? And that takes time. So really, I think the best thing is for somebody to go and talk to someone with some training about their anger, about what's maybe all the pressure that's building up that keeps popping off in these outbursts, whatever that looks like. So if someone's really concerned about a person's anger, it would be encouraging them to say, hey, I think maybe you need to let some pressure off by talking to somebody. And those people with training can then get to the bottom, because we're angry about different things, right? So there's no one size fits all. I did have a friend who just went through an anger management course in addition to his other counseling, and he found it to be really valuable. He learned so much about anger and about why people are angry. It's helped him to deal with a lot of what he's been frustrated about. So anger management courses, if in general, just like almost anything else when we talk about this, if someone is willing and wanting to get better, they can. An anger management course can be incredible for someone who wants to know about anger. For someone who's court ordered to do it, they're not going to necessarily find that much value out of it because they didn't want to be there in the first place. They're mad about the anger management course, right? So the basis of people getting better almost always is a desire to get better. But if there is a desire to get better, man, the chances are so high for life to change and things to get better.
Oh, can I chime in on this too? I like what you said because a lot of times we treat the symptoms but not the root. When you go to a doctor, he asks you what kind of issues you're having. He's not trying to treat the symptoms, he's trying to get to the root because there's always a reason why you do what you do.
That's right.
So then, we hear PTSD, but we only think about it for vets, people that have been in the military, but our children are suffering from PTSD, dealing with things in the home, arguments between two parents, fighting, that can traumatize a child with the thoughts of divorce, where I'm gonna live, and trying to choose sides. Then there are things that are happening in that home or in your community or dealing with death. That's the reason why here in the state of Georgia, the GBI, they did their study where suicide went up during COVID. Matter of fact, they had literally, because of the number of suicides, they had recognized there's a epidemic, a pandemic of suicide because of why? Aloneness, death, fear. A lot of it is fear. And fear will rack you. Some people have fear of what I'm gonna do when I graduate, or different things, just fear. The fear of not having my mom, my dad, the fear of I lost somebody that I truly love. And then here it is, how do that come out? That comes out sometimes in anger or what I've been through in my childhood. That's the reason why I encourage you to talk to a therapist. I'm telling you, we were not designed to be alone. God never tells us to isolate ourselves. Fellowship one with another. The Bible says, confess our faults one to another. Be accountable one to another. Because in that confession, it frees you. It relieves you. And when you're talking to somebody that's not judgmental, but not sitting like they sharp and just sitting there like you're saying, it really helps out. So parents, your kids can be suffering from PTSD, but many of you have told your children what goes on in this house at their cost of hurting. That's bad advice. Now they're covering and they're holding secrets. And one of my slogans is, your safety is more important than your secret. Because your secret is killing you. And you're drowning in a secret that now you want to talk and comes out. And that's the reason why it's important. And let your children be able to express themselves, how they're feeling. You know, it's very important. Kids got to, as an adult sometimes, and sometimes we, you know, I'm 50 years old, so we always talk about the old days where our parents, they ain't have it all right either. A lot of times what our parents did brought trauma to us, but they thought they was helping us, but it brought trauma to us, and so we bring that back into our kids. You have to let your children have a voice and be able to talk to them and allow them to have those tough conversations. It's a reason why they're angry. Why are you angry? What happened? And when you begin to talk to them, it's going to come out. But a trained professional will know how to do it. So try to encourage them to get to somebody that can do that.
And just to add to what you would have said, sometimes the source of the anger could be a parent.
Yeah.
And therefore, sometimes the source of the anger could be the parent that's trying to figure out what's going on with the child, and therefore the child does not really want to share with them what is happening and will open up with someone else. So getting that help is necessary for that child as well.
So we want to state that we realize that we've gone over on time, this being our last session. I know we already have 4 questions lined up already, and we're over on time. So if anybody needs to make their way out, there's some resources on the table right outside. Please stop by and take a look and take what you need on your way out. So here's a question, first out of the 4 questions, and we'll continue. I just wanted to make that announcement so nobody feels like feels hostage, but we definitely want to take advantage while we have some subject matter experts here. So we know that there's, among so many addictions, we know that social media itself can be addictive. Technology, screen time is tied to addiction. What is your recommendation, or where is that balance between exasperating a problem by creating the withdrawal that comes from addiction, by taking a phone, if this is, say you're dealing with a minor or a child, taking a phone, which can add to the problem, but at the same time, within the algorithms in social media, if somebody's constantly looking at depressing material, constantly looking at things that are about suicide and not necessarily in a helpful way, right? Things that kind of fuel their very feelings, the algorithms within social media will make it continue to pop up. Where do you think that balance is between, if it's a minor, taking that out of their possession to try to help them versus the withdrawal worsening the situation? And maybe just your thoughts on screen time in general, because even adults will sit there and scroll through things that are not helping them. But then when they try to distance themselves from it, go through some kind of withdrawal.
Well, to answer your question, that is true. They did a study on social media and with linked to depression and anxiety is when a young person begin to get into social media and they post and they looking for likes. So when they get these likes, the brain releases these endorphins just like a drug. They get so excited because the first thing what people do after they post, they want to see how many likes they get. So if nobody really liking and commenting on their stuff, then they become depressed. Then the second thing is too much of anything is not good for you. So there have to be a balance. Parents, you have to balance your kids' time on social media. You are the parent. And then sometimes to have conversation about what they are looking at on social media. Isn't it amazing that in China, they don't allow them to have about 20 minutes of social media? And their kids are not having the high thing of suicide and depression. There's a limit on that. Keep in mind, if I see this all the time, it's gonna have a direct effect on my life. If all I see is negativity, guess what? I'm gonna be negative. If all I'm hearing is negative, guess what? I'm gonna act out in negative. So we have to balance as even parents, even as adults. How many, let's be honest, how many look on Facebook and find yourself done wasted an hour or two? Now, you as an adult knows what it does to you. What you think how as a young person? So I believe in balance. I believe in coming back, parents, and having conversation. Because we give our kids phones to stop from having conversation. How many of you in your home, your children text you, and you just in the other room? That's how we communicate now. Because we don't talk at the dinner table anymore. But that's not God's plan. So when I look at you and talking to you, I'm looking at your body language, because a text can be misconstrued. But when I'm talking to you, you can see my body language. Well, I know my dad loved me. I know my parent loved me because they're talking to me. You got to come back and bring the family back and have that good time, quality time. That's the balance of the home. That's the importance of the home. We got to get to a point that we're not so busy that we are having that quality time with our kids. How's your day? Not just saying, hey, how's your day? Oh, okay. No, seriously. What went on today, bro? Hey, man, really? Oh, okay, cool. Man, that's awesome. Then, next thing, as parents, watch this, affirmation. Affirm your kids. Don't ever call your child stupid. Because if you ever find a stupid child, you follow them home, they got two stupid parents at the door. Words are powerful. Affirm your kids. Speak life into you. You know what I do with my daughters? I have three daughters. I have three daughters. And quickly, I'm going to share this with I share this with them every morning. When they wake up, I tell them, you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're going to the top, you're not going to be stopped, you're the head and not the tail. I speak that over their life. Then I told them, I said, listen, Dad is not going to always be here. So every morning, you brushing your teeth, you washing your face, speak three things over your life. I can hear my daughter saying, I am beautiful, I'm amazing. All of this. You know what that does? When they walk out of that house, they feel it. You empowered them. Doesn't matter what the world bring their way. I'm amazing. I'm wonderful. So that's where the balance is going to come in. What are you speaking over your children?
To follow that up just real briefly, I do want to think, number one, as parents, we have to model for our children. So if we keep telling them that they need to not be on screen time all the time, but we're on screens for all of our stuff, you know, that's what they're going to follow. They're going to do what we do, not what we say to do. The other thing is there's a difference between external obedience and internal obedience, meaning that we can force our children to obey up to a certain point when we're in their presence. But when they leave us, if their heart hasn't changed, if there hasn't been an understanding of why we're asking them to obey, then they will do whatever they feel like doing. And so when we talk about social media, for example, Instagram, the whole basis of these algorithms is to create a sense of some sort of discomfort, right? Because we want to turn people into consumers, not we, but that's the goal of social media, to turn people into consumers, to gather their data to figure out how best to sell to them, which means we want teens to feel ugly. We want teens to feel not smart enough, not good enough, because then they're going to consume more of our products. So Instagram models don't even look like Instagram models in real life. They don't. Right? All of the filters and all the stuff, you could see an Instagram model walk down the street, you probably won't recognize them. But that's the reality, like we've created a false reality. So we need to teach our children a lot of this, like what's actually going on behind the scenes, and help them to understand and start making age-appropriate decisions for themselves as to what is good and what is not good, what they consume and how that impacts them, like you've been talking about this whole night. There's no perfect fix to this. Social media is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. There are some benefits because there can be communities there. There can be, when people are isolated and depressed in person, they can find their people online. That can be a good thing. But there's a lot of negativity there. And we have to train our children very intentionally why we're saying these things need limits, why we're saying these things cannot always be a positive thing, why you can't just consume everything, because some of that trash will really impact your life and the way you look at the world. So I really think it's important to invest in internal obedience in everything, right? Explaining to our children why we expect to be listened to and how that's protecting them and how that's preparing them for their own success in their life as they become adults.
And in addition to what would have been said, setting those boundaries are critical but also educating them on why you set the boundaries are even more important. Because if you set the boundaries without any education, you are taking from them that which they need in terms of when you set boundaries, when you punish whatever you do without educating, when they go out to be on their own, having their own children, running their own home, they don't have that tool set that is necessary. So they'll say, just do as I say and don't do as I do. And so setting boundaries is important, but educating them why the boundaries are set, that is even more important as well.
And I'm always transparent. Now, my oldest daughter is 27, my youngest daughter is 10. Now, I can tell my oldest daughter, blah, 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 this, and she gonna go. But my youngest daughter, she wanna know why. And if you ain't convinced her, I remember one time my wife had told her, go to her room, she'll punish, blah, blah. And I said, well, don't you know? She's like, I still believe what I believe. And like you're saying, until you convince them and tell them why, but back in our days when we were growing up, if you question, you don't question me. All they want to know is, she's the type of person, just tell me why or why not, and what is the reason why. It helps them out.
Okay, Pastor Mellows. This question is about, I don't recall if I heard or if I may have missed it last night, I don't know. But how much does the environment, the externals, and your chemistry, your body chemistry in terms of your food, the gentleman over there talked about being hungry. A hungry man isn't, no, being angry. A hungry man is an angry man. And many times, you don't know where trauma, stress, depression comes in with something externally or chemically is happening, and so it may take you a very long time to read the signals or what have you. So where does it begin and end? Get my question?
Yes, that's a really great question. I think that, first of all, some of it is sometimes trial and error. Like if we're going through some places where we're like, I'm feeling really down, I'm feeling really low, some of the first things we can do is work on our environment, work on our physical health, and see if that impacts our mental health. There's a lot of science that's coming out right now about even what we eat and how that's impacting so much our sense of well-being. Yes, I see your hand. Oh, okay. Sure, for a child. So that would be the same process, right? It's just the caregivers are helping out in that process that we want to recognize. Like I did talk about, sunlight, exercise, regular sleep patterns, all of these things, hydration, proper diet, that can transform a life even before you ever get to counseling. Sometimes what a counselor does is just reminding you to do those things. That's the basis of it. So absolutely, our environment, we are so impacted by our environment. And that's why in the winter, there are people who have seasonal affective depression, right? Because they're not getting enough sunlight, and so it actually impacts their sense of well-being. And absolutely, I think that's important.
Okay, sorry. My question's towards Pastor Mello. We kind of discussed this a little bit, but I guess as a helper, as a social worker, as someone who deals with young people coming up to us, minors telling us that they're suicidal, how do you address families or cultures who, for instance, in my work, sometimes I don't really have the time to develop that rapport because the teachers or the principals bring the kids and they're like, hey, we have a crisis, bye.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to build a rapport, but then they're also opening up saying, by the way, I have a plan. Like it's like level 3.
Sure.
So I worked in an area where it was highly populated with Hispanics, and our culture is pretty much don't talk about it, and the parents don't believe in therapy or mental health at all. So how do you deal with those families? Like I guess my question is, how can you build that rapport with the families as fast as you're trying to rebuild the rapport, but also the safety of the kid and making the parent come on board, because sometimes you have to force the kid to do something, and then you're kind of not, the rapport is gone.
Yeah.
And so they're mad at you and the school.
Yeah.
Which, like you said earlier, I'd rather them mad at me or the school, and I'll take the blame, and the kid is safe.
Right.
But how can we, I guess, how can we build the bridge?
Yeah. So one part of the problem is like these conversations need to happen more often just in general before that ever gets to that point, right? So that we can start challenging these ideas that therapy is always bad or that mental health doesn't exist, right? Because we know that's simply not true. In those moments when you're in a crisis situation, safety is paramount, right? And what that means is I'm going to try and build rapport with these parents by being kind and respectful and thoughtful, but if I'm not getting anywhere, I might have to be annoying. I might have to be a little bit, like, get them frustrated with me. I might have to be the bad guy sometimes. You could be mad at me all you want. Your kid still needs to talk to somebody, right? Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. Your child is in danger right now. If you love your child, I need you to trust me in this moment. I need you to get them the help they need. One of the frustrating things about working in mental health is you see people who make the wrong decision. I've had parents who say, absolutely not, my child will not go to therapy. And there's nothing I can do unless they're in active crisis where I can call the cops. But I've had times where we knew, we had a clinical director, we had everybody on board saying this person is in imminent danger, but they were under 18 and their parent did not believe it. The police were called, the police did not want to engage, and we had to release that child to that parent. And all we can do in that moment is pray. And I've seen God work in those moments too, right? At the end of the day, we have to trust in our God and that He can work in even terrible situations. But there are times where you're going to have to be the bad guy and just sort of be okay with not being liked. And that's hard. That's hard for me. I don't like that position, but it has to happen.
All right, so we're going to do the last two questions here, and then we're going to thank you guys who are here in person, the remnant.
The faithful few.
Yeah, the faithful few who are still here in person. We're going to do these two questions, and then we'll wrap. And thank you for those who are still joining us online as well. All right, we're down to one.
Okay, so I don't remember if this was talked about last night or the night before, but it was mentioned how you can be your biggest critic, and everybody can be telling you, oh, you're doing a wonderful job, but in your head you're like, oh no, like you did this wrong, you did that wrong. Oh, they're just saying that because they're trying to be nice. How do you change that internal monologue to something more positive rather than always criticizing yourself?
Yeah. So. Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you'd like to answer that.
One of the things, changing the mindset, one of the things that I did, and I can use my experience to help to relate to what you're saying, is I failed English for like 8 years in a row. 8 years in a row, I failed English. But it wasn't, before I passed English, I was doing some subjects, and when I got one of them, and it might sound simple, but that for me was powerful in that moment. I got one, I think, in principle of accounts. In that moment, I made a self-statement, a self-talk, a positive self-talk. I said, young man, you're not done, so you're not done. Because when you're failing for a while, and especially young persons, when they're failing and you don't have that support, that person to affirm you, then you keep going down and you start believing that your life will only be a failure. And so in that moment when I passed that external exam for the first time and getting the highest grade, I said to myself, boy, you're not done, which is young man, you're not done. And in that moment, my whole outlook, that which was a pain, now becomes my purpose. And then I start to see the possibilities start opening up as a result of the purpose that was derived from the pain that I was experiencing.
when you realize that your purpose is birthed out of pain. Pain, sometimes the things that you're struggling with is an indication of your purpose in life. And see how I can put it. What I found out in my life is just like he's saying is, you're really gonna have to, a lot of times we talk about the future, you know what I mean? What are your goals and and we look always down the future, but I gotta live right now. So what he's saying, once you have those little minor goal accomplishment, look at those and say, you know what, I am not dumb. I'm not dumb, I'm not this, I'm not that. Don't speak negativity over your life. And continue to speak positive things over your life. And you might be in a season now, or where you're going through and it's storming outside, and you're just in a season. You're not going to stay in that season. You're going to pass through it. And you're struggling right now, but you're going to get over that. You're not going to always struggle right here. And I think a lot of times is what we think, and how to change that mindset is that you got to tell yourself, yeah, I didn't do good right there. I might didn't make an A, but you know what? That B sure looked good to me. Oh man, I see. I'm talking about sometime I got a D and I was happy. And one is that my wife was in, she's a counselor. So this little boy, he was having problems in schools and stuff like that. So what she did, she affirmed him. She went to his class and she was like, oh, this is so amazing, blah, 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 this and that. And she said he just started poking his chest out. Now, he didn't even really try. He just threw something together. And he looked, he like, Miss Rain, you think that's something? Wait till I come back and do the other project. I'm talking about that young man went from being here to up here because he saw something different. One, somebody helped him out. Two, because one of the craziest saying that we always hear, I pulled myself up by my own bootstrap. Totally impossible. We are in relationship. And so what you're gonna do is speak life over yourself. That's why I teach my kids. You have to speak that. I can believe this for you, but you have to believe it.
So to follow up with what he's saying right there, every time you have a thought in your mind, you have a decision to make, and it's a very split-second decision most of the time. That's whether or not you believe the thought that you just had. And a lot of times, we have thoughts in our head, and we can call them automatic thoughts sometimes in therapy. Automatic thoughts are things that come as soon as the situation hits, you get this thought. And that thought, you don't even question it. You accept it as a truth. But if you stop and think about what that thought really was, then you can start questioning, what is that really true? So my point is, like, when we make a mistake, if I make a real small mistake, my automatic thought could be, I'm so stupid, right? That's my first thought, and I don't even question it. I just accept it and keep going. What I'm doing is I'm teaching myself to believe that I am a stupid person. Then I act as if I am a stupid person, even if I'm not, right? I can do that about how attractive I am. I can do that about how capable I am. I can tell myself I'm not a capable person. And then even if I was a capable person, I'll act as if I'm not. And so sometimes we have to intentionally choose the thoughts that we allow, the stories we tell ourselves, right? This is identity work. Who are you really? Are you who you say you are, or who the world says you are? Are you who God says you are? Are you, and sometimes we may not want to believe it, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, literally. Like, I don't feel smart, but I know that I have intelligence. And so I'm going to choose to believe that even when I don't feel it. And guess what? When you change your thoughts, your feelings change. When you change your feelings, your behaviors change. And that impacts your thoughts. It's a whole cycle.
And I know you guys have used the analogy here lately of smart or, versus dumb, but, this applies to beautiful or valuable or whatever. I want to thank you guys. I know that we had people who had to leave, but realizing that it was the last night and that one person's question would probably hit and apply across the board Thank you guys for taking the time to do this. Can we give them a hand real quick? Raise your left. Thank you to everybody who joined us online throughout this week. Thank you to you guys for dropping in throughout the week. Mello, just thanks so much, man. We know we had planned, we had scheduled something. Whoa. Power surge, do we still have internet? Who knows? All right, we had planned doing something from last year. We wound up having to reschedule a couple times. I'm glad we were able to do it now. We're grateful to you, grateful to Kyra and the kids also for taking the time to come out and join us. Here's a little gift on behalf of the church just to say thank you. And I'm sorry, man, I'm not professional. I don't even have an envelope. But thank you, brother. Thank you, Will Frank, for joining us today. And we're hoping to have you out here to do a seminar as well as Chaplain Seymour. Thank you guys for joining us. Hey, God bless you guys. If you don't mind, I'll just have a quick word of prayer, and we'll close this time out together. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for just for all of your blessings, Lord. You know, many of us here are going through a difficult season right now, or we have loved ones who are, and this is something that that we can't escape. We can look throughout your word and find examples of many of your most faithful children, and even your son Jesus Christ, going through hard seasons, and yet their dependence remained on you, and that's where we put all of our trust and our hope. But we also, Lord, have been empowered. We've been equipped with practical tools, Lord, to continue to fight the good fight, Lord, as we wait for your soon return. So we pray, Lord, that you would keep our mindsets positive, Lord. Help us to see others and ourselves through your lens, and help us, Lord, to co-labor with you, so that our health can prosper, even as our soul prospers. And by that health, we refer to our mental health. So, Lord, we ask for a special blessing over the ministers on the stage right now, and in a special way for Pastor Mello and his family, Lord. Take them safely as they continue to do this good work. And take us safely, Lord, and continue to build us up, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Hey, thank you, guys. God bless you. We'll hope to see you soon. Grab some food on your way out, and it's dark, but if you want to shoot a basketball, go ahead.